if you mentioned that Philadelphia's technology community is headed in the right direction, what is that direction? What is the destination that we're working toward? What is kind of the success piece that you think we're ending up toward?
So I think the first thing is to say that the metric of success is not, are we equal to Silicon Valley in venture funding or companies started in whatever else. I think the context has to be the place that you are. And so I don't know what the specific measurement of it is, but it's a healthy, vibrant startup community, right? Because startup communities are economic engines of growth. We know that, and those are good for places. They're good for people. They're good for jobs. So I think when you look at things like, can companies stay here and grow here? Do we successfully attract investment from both inside the region and outside the region? What you're looking for, I don't think it's relative to anybody else. I think it's, can you build a company successfully here?
Perhaps on the growth pipeline we've had in Philadelphia, we've gotten better at getting people to launch ventures. We've perhaps risen the profile of that community of people who can launch it. Where are we in that trajectory of, staying here when you're at 50, 100 employees or beyond, or what should we be doing to make that a stronger case? What would be your story as that growth happens?
I think one of the important elements to really have Philadelphia take that next huge leap is we need to grow another big technology company organically. One of the things that Alan Krauss of the Ben Franklin Technology Partners talked about, which I thought was really smart, is that Philadelphia companies, a little bit due to the cultural nature and probably a little bit because of the financing that's available, tend to take less money early and tend generally to be at worse terms than in particular our Silicon Valley kind of companies. One of the things that then happens is if you're a founder, you're more likely to sell early because it's going to be economically better for you. If you keep going through round and round, you're going to be diluted down, and it's sort of not worth it to play the big game. I think we need to have some companies that can play that full cycle, because you get big companies, they really can generate business for lots of other businesses around them and generate that talent. So I think that's one of the things that we really would love to have here.
I would imagine so.
Hopefully us.
Yeah, well, actually, that's going to be my last big question before I put it to you. What is the Real Foodworks narrative going to be? I mean, how do you think you fit into the story you've talked about?
Well, there's a lot of ways we do fit right in, right? We're a very real business. So we've been generating revenue. We're just over a year old, and we've been generating revenue for just under a year. We're very focused on actually being profitable. We're sticking to our knitting and getting it right here in Philadelphia, but we're all about going national and expanding and becoming a huge company. So I think we fit it very well in terms of type, right? We're delivering real value for customers. We sell them something, they pay us. And I hope, I'd love to be the one that writes that next narrative.
So my favorite conversation that you and I have had in lots of different ways is that playing to your strengths. That's been in a few of your answers, but I want to kind of have you hit on that directly and broaden it at non-traditional markets. If lack of early stage capital is a complaint that everyone has, but particularly in markets that are not the Valley, and the idea is either bootstrapping or at least less funding, and so revenue becomes more of a conversation. Talk a little bit about that being kind of maybe a marking point of a lot of non-traditional markets of staying true to your roots wherever they are, and in this case, maybe being revenue first, and why that's so best.
So one of the things that I can't verify, but I think it's true, is that companies that are started in worse economic times tend to be more successful. Now, there's a couple ways to look at that. One is to say that there's something about that makes you more successful. I don't think that's it. It's a selection process, right? So the fact is you can't get going during a recession unless you actually have a really great thing that people are actually willing to pay for. I think in a very similar, the situation we're in secondary markets is very similar. We can't just go to lunch and all of a sudden have 500 grand. It doesn't work that way around here, right? Therefore, you better have a real business. You better be able to build it with actual revenue from customers on less capital from investors. I think that tends to create stronger, real companies. They may have slightly lower growth rates. They may, especially early. But longer term, you're starting so much ahead of the game. So if you're in Silicon Valley and you get your 500 grand and you go hire your 5 developers and you've got product like instantaneously and now you're having to iterate 6 times, here we're answering the phone is how we did it. Right? We're literally answering the phone. And then we graduated to our little WordPress site with Chargerify on the back end. And just now do we have a real thing a year later. Oh, but we knew what to build. So it's a different, I think it's a slightly different growth path. But in a lot of ways, for the entrepreneur, who's the one I care about in this whole process, it's lower risk. It's harder. Right, you're going to earn less early and all that. It's harder, but it's actually lower risk because you don't blow the whole thing and then fall off the edge of a cliff. You actually learn the business, get the business right earlier. You're forced to.